The meaning of Solomon's Temple. Solomon's Temple in biblical history. Have you ever stopped to think about the power and meaning of Solomon's Temple? This wasn't just a huge and luxurious building. It is a profound symbol of worship and relationship with God. The construction of the temple wasn't just a matter of engineering. It reflected Israel's faith, a space that transcended physical construction and extended into the spiritual realm. The temple, with its majestic columns, golden curtains, and the mysterious Holy of Holies, was, and still is, a place of great reverence. But what did it really represent? And how is it relevant to us today? And what if I told you that Solomon's Temple is much more than an ancient relic? Often, we see the temple as just a historical monument, but the truth is that it carries deep meanings and symbols that still resonate in our lives today. Let's explore every part of this temple and see how it points to something much greater, something beyond the stones and gold. Solomon's Temple has a lot to teach us, and with each discovery, you'll understand why it's so important. As we journey through this, I want you to notice how the key words like worship, holiness, and symbolism will weave together throughout the story. Imagine, for a moment, the atmosphere of this grand temple. What did it mean to the people of Israel? How did they see God's presence there? And more importantly, how can we, today, apply the symbolism of Solomon's Temple in our spiritual lives? But before we dive into the details of each area of the temple, let me challenge you. Have you ever thought about what worship truly means to you? Solomon's Temple has something to teach us about how we should approach God. Hold that thought as we move to the next point, because it's going to open up a new perspective on the construction of this monumental work. Stay tuned. The construction of the temple, instructions and obedience. Now, let's talk about the construction of the temple. What do you think is needed to build something that is literally God's dwelling place? Believe it or not, the construction of Solomon's Temple was done according to very specific instructions given by God to David, Solomon's father. Nothing was left to chance. Every detail, every stone had a purpose. And, of course, we can't forget about the work of the craftsmen and priests involved in this grand project. Imagine the scene. King Solomon, knowing the importance of the work, receives all these divine directions and begins the construction. For him, it wasn't just about building something beautiful. It was about obeying a command given by God. Holiness and worship were present from the very beginning. And here's where it gets relevant to us. How many times have you started a project thinking it wouldn't be a big deal, only for it to turn out to be far more significant than you imagined? Did you know that the way the temple was designed carries incredible symbolism about our spiritual lives? Every part of the construction represented the closeness of God to man. Solomon's obedience and dedication are clear examples of how we should behave in our spiritual walk. It's not about doing things haphazardly, but with reverence and intention. And if you want to apply this in your life, start by observing how you dedicate time to God and your projects. Now, take a moment and reflect. How can you apply obedience and discipline in building your own dreams? Solomon's Temple is a powerful example of how faith and action go hand in hand. Let's move on now to the next sacred space of the temple, the outer court. The outer court, the gateway to worship. What do you imagine when you think about the beginning of a faith journey? Well, in Solomon's Temple, the outer court was the first step. It wasn't just a space to walk through, but the place where the people of Israel gathered to worship, pray, and offer sacrifices. Remember the word worship? This is where it takes shape. It wasn't just any place. It was the starting point for anyone who wanted to draw near to God. This court represented the beginning of a spiritual journey, an open door to holiness. It's like when you decide to change your life. The first step is always the most important. And what did this first step involve? Prayers, sacrifices, and moments of reflection. For many, that court represented hope and forgiveness. As they entered, the people drew closer to God, leaving behind their failures and seeking a fresh start. But wait. Have you ever stopped to think about what it really means to take the first step? When you decide to enter your outer court, what are you leaving behind? In today's world, it's like starting a new habit, changing the way you think, or adopting a new life philosophy. And of course, How do you apply this to your faith? Here's the trick. The outer court also teaches us about purification. Before entering more sacred spaces, the people needed to purify themselves. It's a bit like when you prepare your heart before praying, removing distractions. This symbolism can be very practical for us, showing that before anything else, we need to prepare ourselves for genuine worship. Let's now move to the next sacred area of the temple, the holy place. Before we continue, leave your like and subscribe to the channel to be blessed with more videos to inspire your life. The holy place, the area of worship and service. When we enter the holy place of Solomon's temple, the environment shifts. Have you ever wondered what truly characterizes a sacred place? In the temple, the holy place was where the priests performed their most important duties. Picture the scene: the table of showbread, the altar of incense, and the 7-branched candlestick, all symbols of faith and consecration. This space wasn't accessible to just anyone. Only the priests could enter to serve and perform rituals. This concept of service and holiness teaches us something crucial. Holiness isn't just about being in a sacred place, but how you dedicate yourself to service. What do you do with your time? How do you serve others? The holy place, therefore, reminds us that worship isn't just about what you receive, but also about what you give to God. It may seem hard to apply in today's world, right? But think about this. The holy place teaches us that in our daily lives, we need dedicated spaces for service and worship. It could be your prayer time, your acts of kindness, or even the work you do with purpose. By doing these things, you are, in a way, entering your own holy place, where worship becomes part of who you are. So, it doesn't matter if you're at home, at work, or anywhere else, make that space a place of consecration. And now, let's explore the most sacred space in the temple, the Holy of Holies. The Holy of Holies, the divine presence. Now we've arrived at the heart of Solomon's temple, the Holy of Holies. This was where God's presence dwelled most intensely. Only the high priest could enter this space, and that happened just once a year on Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement. This place represented God's pure divine presence, and only those who were completely purified could approach him. Imagine the awe and reverence the Israelites must have felt knowing that, in this sacred space, resided the Ark of the Covenant, the ultimate symbol of God's presence. The symbolism of this space is clear. We can only approach God with a pure heart, free from impurity and full of faith. It's a powerful reminder for all of us. Our relationship with God requires preparation, reverence, and respect. This concept of preparation is something we can apply today. True worship, as we see here in the Holy of Holies, doesn't happen just anyhow. We need to purify our intentions, our thoughts, and our actions. And more importantly, we must understand that although this space was once exclusive, today we have free access to God through Christ, and that transforms our view of worship. Now, think about this. What would be the equivalent of the Holy of Holies in your life? Where do you experience your greatest connection with God? It could be in your moment of silent prayer or your daily reflection. What matters is that you understand the importance of approaching that space with reverence and holiness. And as we wrap up, let's look at how Solomon's temple points to the future. The symbolism of the curtains and elements. Talking about the curtains and elements of the temple might seem trivial at first, but trust me, they carry deep meanings. The curtains that separated the holy place from the Holy of Holies weren't just pieces of fabric. They represented the barrier between the human and the divine. The symbolism is clear. Only through God's intervention can we cross that barrier. These elements, like the altar of incense, the candlesticks, and even the positioning of the doors, indicated the need for preparation and holiness. They teach us that to approach God's presence, we can't just come any old way. There's a process, there's a reverence, and you, just like the Israelites, need to understand the importance of these steps. This idea of reverence leads us to reflect. How can you apply this symbolism in your life? In your daily routine, do you respect the separation between what is holy and what is worldly? Solomon's temple teaches us the importance of discipline and preparation. Let's conclude our reflection on how Solomon's temple points to the future. Solomon's temple as a prophetic figure. Solomon's temple, with all its grandeur and complexity, is not just a physical building but a prophetic figure. It points to the coming of Christ and the fulfillment of God's promises. When the curtain of the Holy of Holies is torn after Christ's death, we see direct access to God opened up to all. What does this mean for you today? This symbolism of the temple teaches us so much about our faith journey. What was once restricted to a physical location with strict rules is now accessible to everyone, no matter where we are or what we've done. We can approach God's presence at any time with a pure heart and faith. And this is not just a privilege, but a responsibility. Just as the Israelites prepared themselves to enter the temple with reverence and holiness, we too must approach God with the same seriousness and dedication. Now, I invite you to dive even deeper into this fascinating topic. What does Solomon's temple really represent to you in your spiritual walk? What lessons can we draw from this grand structure to apply in our daily lives? If you're looking for more insights on how to live a life of worship, holiness, and service, keep exploring this theme. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel to catch more videos that will help you understand these profound teachings and apply them to your life. Share this video with your friends, and together, let's continue learning and growing in faith.